Welcome all. Good to see you. Come on in, get settled. We are recording. Seeing everyone come on in. Wonderful. Okay, well, we are going to kick off. So good afternoon and welcome. My name is Kristen DeDominic, and I'm the Executive Director of the Bucks-Mont Collaborative. So if you're new to us, we are a nonprofit membership organization. We're dedicated to fostering information and resource sharing, dialogue, and collaborative action to strengthen the health and human services sector in Bucks and Montgomery counties. So transportation is, of course, a topic that very much affects our sector, and we're thrilled to have SEPTA Forward with us today. In this hour, we'll hear updates from the SEPTA Forward team regarding their Reimagining regional rail and bus revolution projects in Bucks and Montgomery counties, including microtransit. So thank you to Dan Nemiroff and Harley Cooper with SEPTA Forward for joining us today. And thank you to our co-hosts, the Partnership TMA of Montgomery County and TMA Bucks. We are so grateful to have you in the community to convene us around such a critical topic as transportation. In just a moment, you're going to hear from both of them. But before I pass over the Zoom mic, I want to just take a quick poll to learn if you've been with us before for a SEPTA Forward conversation. So I'm going to launch that poll. Do you see it there? Give me a thumbs up if you see it on your end. Good, I'm seeing it. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Wonderful. I see most folks have taken it here. Maybe just 5 more seconds. Okay. I'm going to end that poll. Share those results. So we have some who have, the majority have not. A couple are unsure. That feels fair. We've all been on Zoom a lot, right? So it'll be good that we'll make sure that we have some grounding on background as well today. Okay, so thank you. So I'm going to pass it over now to Jackie Baxter-Rollins with the Partnership TMA of Montgomery County to welcome and share a few remarks.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. Lovely to see so many faces. Yes, Partnership TMA. We could ask, what's the TMA? Transportation Management Association, of which there are more than 200 throughout the country. Our TMA's mission is to expand transportation options, ease traffic congestion, and educate and engage our communities on the use of on land use, environmental issues, and healthy lifestyles. We are really thrilled to work with SEPTA and our partners on these projects that we hope will expand opportunities for people to access transit safely. And we're very thrilled to bring to you 2 new open house events so that people can attend in public in Lansdale and Telford in November. And I'll drop information about that in the chat, and it's on our website. Thanks, Kristen. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Jackie. And it would be easy to just say, well, what she said, except in Bucks County, but I'll do a little better than that today. My name is Steve Knoll. I'm the Executive Director of TMA Bucks. We are, as Jackie mentioned, a Transportation Management Association, nonprofit serving all of Bucks County. Thanks to Kristen and Jackie for collaborating with us on today's session. We're working every day on a variety of transportation-related issues and matters across Bucks County, including public transit access improvements, reducing traffic congestion, vehicle tailpipe emissions reductions, assisting individuals with using public transportation to get to jobs in Bucks County, and also traffic safety related activities and education, just to name a few. We are a membership supported organization, so I'd invite you to visit our website at tmabucks.com to take some time, learn what we're all about, and feel free to contact me or any member of my very capable staff can share with you more information on membership in TMA Bucks. It's critical to our success, and I'm sure it's critical to the success of the Partnership TMA as well. So if you find yourself in Montgomery County, I would invite you to also consider membership in the Partnership TMA. And whether or not you are a member of our organization, check our website regularly for updates on projects, programs, and other information. So thank you very much, and I'll step aside and let's get on with things.
You got it. Thanks so much, Steve. Before we get on with it, just one more poll, I promise, one more poll. All right, what service area are you in? Because we want to understand the footprint here and then as well for follow-up. Okay, so tell us, what area do you primarily serve? Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much. I see some folks eating while they're doing it. Thank you for the commitment to multitask, get that food in. Thank you for taking the poll. All right, we're almost there. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, thank you. All right, I'm going to close that poll. So it looks like I'm going to show those results. Looks like the majority are coming from Montgomery today, but Steve and your team, I definitely see folks here from Bucks, so we have good representation. One person representing Chester and one from the city of Philadelphia. Wonderful. We will be following up with you with geographic specific information as available. Okay, so thank you. All right, let's hand it over to Dan with the SEPTA Forward team and Harley. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to this presentation.
All right, Harley, you want to start sharing? Thank you. Close up. All right, so good lunch, everybody. My name is Dan Nemiroff. I am with the Department of Strategic Planning and Analysis at SEPTA, and I am the project manager for the Bus Revolution, which is the authority's first comprehensive redesign of its entire bus network. Part of that project is the introduction or the potential introduction of microtransit. And then we're also going to touch briefly on reimagining regional rail. So next slide. So here's the agenda. I should have just started with this one. So I'm going to give a really brief introduction focusing on Bus Revolution. And then Harley is going to take over and talk about microtransit and the preferred draft network in Bucks and Montco. We're going to switch it up. And then I'm going to give an update on reimagining regional rail. As I said, it is an update, and it's something that some of you probably may have seen before, and I apologize for that. But that team is doing a lot of work right now, and you know, they'll be sharing more information shortly. And then we'll wrap it up with a conversation about public engagement. I'm going to breeze through the introduction so that Harley can have a lot of time to focus on the microtransit and the bus network. But hopefully we'll have time at the end for some Q&A and conversation. Next slide. All right, we can just skip these ones. Okay, so Bus Revolution, what is it? It is a blank slate redesign of our entire fixed route bus network. We have a big bus network. It's complex. It's gotten more complex over time, and we've never actually looked at it as one entire network. We've done a lot of tinkering. We've done a lot of sort of changes here or there, but we've never actually looked at it comprehensively before. Why are we doing this now? Well, first of all, we've never done it, and we think it's time. But also, we started talking about this project in about the mid-2010s because we noticed that ridership was dropping. And at the same time, it was getting slower and less reliable, and our operating costs were going up. So even though we were basically sending out the same amount of service or not, we weren't actively trying to add service, costs were going up because things were getting slower. We were adding vehicles. Our service was becoming a lot less efficient. And we were worried that these two trends going in the opposite directions would eventually require us to start cutting service. So we decided that we wanted to look at the system holistically and really think about how it would work as a network rather than a bunch of individual routes, which is historically how we've planned and managed it. The other thing is we did, well, I'll skip that, but so let's go to the next slide, Harley. Thank you. It's okay. You're trying to predict what I'm doing, and we're not quite there yet. Anyway, so obviously in 2020, the COVID pandemic began, and that has had a huge impact on ridership. As you can see in this chart, the blue line at the top is 2019, which is obviously the last full year pre-COVID. The other lines are since then, or like sort of the COVID era ridership. And the line that we're in now, the yellow line shows month-to-month ridership, you know, during each of these years. And where we are now is we are still at about 70% ridership in terms of where we were pre-COVID. So bus ridership has been more resilient. It has rebounded faster than other modes, but we're still quite a bit lower than they were pre-COVID. And we don't see this. We don't think this will change unless we really do something to juice up the system, make some changes, make it more attractive for new customers, make it more attractive for current customers to use it for more purposes, and sort of change the way people perceive the bus network. Next slide. The project's goals, and these were established early on in the process. with support from the city and our partner and our county partners to put the rider first. We've done a lot of surveys. We've talked to a lot of people. People want service to be frequent. They want service to be reliable. They want service to be predictable. So we want to introduce some new service design concepts, some new scheduling practices to really focus on reliable service, frequent service, and predictable service. We want to increase access to opportunity. We want people to be able to get further faster using the system. And, we don't want transit to be a barrier. We want people to view transit as a way to connect to the things that they need to get to. And then we want to build trust with reliable service. And this is about partnerships and really building a longer term base for sustainable ridership growth. Next slide. I don't want to spend much longer on this one, but Bus Revolution is part of the SEPTA Forward program. Project Metro, which is referring to rail transit unification, the L, the Broad Street line, et cetera, so that we can better plan for capital improvements on those services. Reimagining regional rail, which I'll talk about a little later, and obviously the redesign. And the idea ultimately, and a goal of all of these projects, is to move towards, sort of to maximize system integration. We are blessed with many modes in the region, and we want to integrate it to the maximum extent possible. This is a long-term goal. There are, frequency barriers. There are, fare barriers, F-A-R-E, not F-A-I-R. So we want to build towards a future where people can use the system as a whole, not just the route that they, the one route that they use. But we want people to start thinking of our entire system as that, like a system, not individual pieces. Next slide. From a Bus Revolution perspective and we are in year 2 of the project. Last year, we did an existing conditions analysis and we did some survey work focused on transit trade-offs. In 2022, we pivoted towards identifying opportunities for improvement, and we shared 2 different scenarios that were, somewhat conceptual over the spring. And we shared those with people through a series of virtual meetings and in-person meetings at our transportation centers. We took that feedback and all that analysis, and we are now sharing the proposed draft network. It is still a draft. And we are doing that through a series of, a series of virtual meetings and in-person meetings that we're having throughout the region. We anticipate finalizing, we're going to be doing about 2 months of engagement. And then in 2023, we will finalize the draft based off of the comments that we've been receiving now and the conversations we've been having. We'll finalize that, and then we'll go back out to the public in the spring of 2023 for meetings that will go directly into hearings. And then in terms of implementation, if things go as planned, which, as they always go as planned, we would begin implementing some of the schedule changes in fall of 2023, and then start phasing in some of the route alignment changes in 2024. So we have a little ways to go before we actually are talking about implementation, but we have a lot of work to do to make sure that, what we're doing makes sense and works, both, vetting publicly, but also internally and with our partners. Next slide. So the strategic approach, and Harley's going to get more into this, as we began developing the final network, was to focus on frequent all-day bus service and areas that can sustain that, and then more consistent schedules, throughout the day and throughout the week. Straighten out our routes to make them more direct, less turns, making sure routes are more strongly identified with specific corridors. Transferring is a big part of this network. It's maybe less of an issue in some of the counties, but it's a big issue in the city and something that I'm sure will come up at some point. And then we wanted to use this project as a way to introduce on-demand services as a way to provide more value to customers out in suburban areas where fixed route services is often difficult to run and unreliable. Next slide.
Okay, I think this is mine. Thanks, Dan. Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Harley Cooper. I work in SEPTA's service planning department. So I work closely with Dan, and I mostly work in short range operational planning for the bus network. And I've been helping out with our microtransit mode, which is what Dan referenced in his last point there, the new on-demand service. And it has a significant impact for Montgomery and Bucks County because we're proposing a number of zones in the two counties, and we want to just take some time to make sure that to familiarize everyone with what that means, and what it means for the service area for our two counties, and then talk to you about how we're going to do public engagement around this, because it's a big change for riders, and we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to provide feedback and help us build this out. So how it works, it is a zone-based point-to-point service. So it's a little bit different from fixed route. You can go anywhere within a designated zone, and it's sort of like dial-a-ride. I like to call it next generation dial-a-ride, because you can also use cell phone technology. If you have a smartphone, you can use an app on your cell phone, much like you would if you were calling Uber or Lyft. And you can request your ride for anywhere within that designated zone. And a computer will schedule that trip. It's a shared ride, so it'll schedule the demand within that zone, and it will let you know when to pick up the vehicle and where. So you would go to the curb like you would today at a bus stop, and then you will share the ride with other customers. It is not a regular 40-foot bus like you're used to seeing. It's a smaller vehicle, more like a 14-passenger vehicle, which is better suited for the demand that we have in these areas. It is the same fare as a SEPTA bus today, so that's $2.50 cash. Or if you have a SEPTA key card, it's $2 with that free transfer. And then if you have a senior card or reduced fare card, it would be the same as you would pay for a fixed route bus. And it is a SEPTA branded vehicle. It is a SEPTA operator, and we maintain the vehicle. So it's a new mode that we're introducing, but it's fully a SEPTA service. So that is how it works. And then I want to just sort of walk through where it works and why we're proposing this specifically in our suburban counties. Density is the primary driver of transit, which is why we have such frequent service in the city of Philadelphia, because that's where we have the residential density and the employment density. And that is why why we have less frequent service in the suburbs where we have lower density, and where microtransit or on-demand service really makes sense is that it's competitive with our less frequent bus service. So if we have a 60-minute bus route today, that's a similar market for the on-demand or the microtransit. So that's some of our lower density areas in our network. And what we're doing with the bus revolution, because it is not a service expansion plan, we're not putting bus service or on-demand service where we don't have service today. We are looking at some of our lowest ridership bus routes that have low frequencies, not a lot of ridership, but still high need. So people who really rely on those bus routes to live their lives where they do. And so we're discussing replacing those, or we're proposing to replace those bus routes with the on-demand service. So those are bus routes where we see fewer than 10 riders per revenue hour today. And we have 10 zones total. I'll show you where they are in just a few slides. But they are entirely in the 4 suburban counties. We don't have on-demand service in the city of Philadelphia. And I will, we like to just sort of share some of the pros and the cons, the strengths and the weaknesses for both riders and for SEPTA as an agency, because this is not a silver bullet. It's sort of our peers, and most of our peer transit agencies do have some form of on-demand. And when it is applied in the right area for the appropriate ridership base, it is, it's tremendously popular. Riders love it. It's very convenient. It gives them more flexible service. It gives them more access. Than they had on fixed route. But we do need to make sure that we're proposing the on-demand service where it makes sense within our region. So we'd like to be upfront about some of the drawbacks of it. But the major strength is really the convenience, because you can schedule a trip when you need it. What we have modeled for the bus revolution is a 30-minute response time. So you could schedule your on-demand trip, and within 30 minutes, you would get your confirmation trip for when your vehicle will be able to pick you up. And I think one of the biggest benefits to it is that the app gives you access to that real-time arrival information. So it's kind of like when you're waiting for your Uber, your Lyft to arrive, you can track the vehicle on your phone. And so you're not sitting out at the bus stop for 30 minutes waiting for the bus to come in the rain and the sun. You can sort of stay where you are, and when the vehicle is going to pick you up. The flip side to that is what I'm sure you're all thinking, and that's the digital divide. And not everyone has smartphones, not everyone's comfortable with technology. We do provide a call center option. So you don't have to use the mobile application. You can always speak to a live person through our reservation line. You just lose access to some of that convenience because you don't have, if there's a delay to your trip arrival time, you don't have that in the app, but it's fully accessible to everyone, regardless of the technology aspect. And there is a learning curve, because we like to say it's one thing to introduce a new bus route, but to introduce a whole new mode, you kind of have to do a lot of travel training and teach people how to use it and how to download the app. And it's a heavier lift than we're used to doing for new service. But that said, we do think it's worth exploring. And then the other downside to it is just it can be a little bit less predictable because you have that 30-minute arrival time, but the vehicle could come in 5 minutes. It could come within 25 minutes. So it does require a little bit of flexibility on the rider, the customer's end, to be able to be okay with that window. And then from SEPTA's perspective, it really allows us to better match service with demand. I'm sure I've certainly seen them, empty buses in the suburbs. We have a lot of them. And so this allows us to use smaller vehicles and to deploy them when there is demand for them. And the technology is what sort of enables us to be a little bit more efficient with those decisions. It's a fully accessible service, which is really important to us. And I think, and then, the flip side, I always like to be upfront about this, is that we're not proposing on-demand service because it doesn't save SEPTA any money. This is going to cost more than the fixed route, but we want to explore this new mode because what we've learned from our peers is that it provides a better quality of service, a higher quality of service for our suburban bus customers. And so, and then I think to an earlier point is, this requires a level of marketing and outreach that we don't necessarily do today at SEPTA. But in order to introduce people to the service, to get them to try it out, to familiarize themselves with it, it's going to be a heavier lift on our end, but we think that the net outcome will be positive. So it's something that we are interested in exploring. So that's sort of I like to put it all out there to be transparent. And then this is always about a conversation with people who really know our riders who know our service area to really get feedback. And that's why we're doing the engagement that Dan and I will talk about in a little bit, so we can really talk to our riders. And so next I'm going to walk through our draft preferred network. If you haven't already seen it, just some key points. To expand on some of what Dan already said, it is budget neutral, so we're not expanding into new service areas. We are trying to better coordinate with SEPTA services. We do have a lot of bus routes today, especially in the suburbs, that overlap with some of our fixed rail modes. So we're trying to encourage people to transfer so we can reallocate those service hours to other bus routes. Dan mentioned the frequent bus network. We're really focusing on building that all-day frequent bus network. And then adding more service midday, evening, and weekends. So we're not providing those like 9 to 5 peak commute trips anymore, but we're trying to serve all trips. And then keeping our schedules more simpler and easier to understand. They can be a little confusing today. And then I think we touched on everything else. And what that looks like is fewer bus routes than we have today. What we have today is 125 bus routes, and our proposed draft network has 99. But the trade-off that you see is that there are more frequent bus routes. So we have 32 frequent bus routes today, and the proposed draft network has 44. And then, and a lot of those are in the city of Philadelphia and the suburbs, we have the microtransit zones, which provides that extra added service in the suburbs. This is the draft proposed network. And Dan, do you want to put a link to maybe the remix map from the Bus Revolution website in the chat so people can explore this? This is a screenshot, so it's a little hard to see. This is a frequency map. Everything, all the bus lines that are red are 10 max routes. So that means that that bus comes every 10 minutes or more frequently throughout the day. The purple is a 15 max route. The teal is a 30 max route. And then the yellow are the hourly 60 max routes. So some of those 60 max routes, like this is the 93 to Pottstown. It's the same alignment, same schedule we have today. We call it a 60 max route, but it's 30 minutes in the peak. And it will continue to have a similar schedule to that. And these polygon shapes, these are the on-demand zones. So you can see there are 2 giant zones in Bucks County. Bucks County is getting a lot of microtransit. And then we have 2 overlapping zones. This is Route 132 today. So this is Montgomeryville and Lansdale, and then it overlaps in Lansdale with another zone going to Hatfield, Telford, Satterton. And I'm actually I have a zoomed in on the next one. Hopefully we can see this a little better. Norristown, we are proposing to convert a number of our low ridership, very infrequent bus routes in Norristown to a large on-demand mode. And then this is very exciting and everyone loves this one. It's a 15 max route that connects King of Prussia Mall to the Norristown Transportation Center to the Plymouth Meeting Mall. So this comes every 15 minutes or more frequently throughout the day, 7 days a week. And that's a huge improvement for this area. And then I always like to include, this is Route 139 today, which sort of split between Chester and Montgomery County. We're proposing to replace the fixed route with an on-demand zone that connects Phoenixville to Spring City, Royersford, and then it connects to the Route 93, which goes to Pottstown. It connects in Limerick. So today we have a lot of folks who live in Spring City and Royersford, and they'll work in Pottstown around the outlets, that area, and so they'll make that connection today. So that's a microtransit to fixed route connection. And the other thing I want to point out is that all the microtransit zones, you can go point to point within that zone. And then each zone connects to a regional route. So you have access to the rest of the network. So you can always, use this as a last mile connector to connect into Norristown, into King of Prussia. You have access to those routes. And then with the SEPTA key card, of course, that transfer is free. So that is, I'm going to give Dan enough time to do the regional rail, but we can, if you have questions about these proposed zones, we can sort of expand that map after Dan does regional rail. Oh, I'm looking at the questions in here now.
Yeah, actually, there are 3. Do you want them now or at the end? What's better for you? So one is, when do you expect to introduce microtransit?
Oh, okay. So that one I can do now. So as part of the Bus Revolution we have, well, I should say it's a parallel project, is I'm leading an implementation plan for microtransit, of which our TMAs are closely involved in. And we are figuring out the timeline of what it will take to implement this, because SEPTA is very complicated. And so some of the things that we know we need to do with this are procure new vehicles, that takes some time. And then we have to evaluate our bus depots and make sure that they can accommodate those new vehicles, because right now we don't mix the types of buses we have in our bus depots. And then we need to make sure that all of our mechanics are trained on the new vehicles. And so right now, what we're doing is just documenting the timeline of and working back from there. And then the third thing that we need to do is negotiate with our operating union, who are not used to doing on-demand service. And so we need to work this into their contract, which is coming up. So all of that takes some time. I think what we've been talking about is 2024, and and we haven't really decided anything officially, but I think phasing in, one zone at a time, just because of the level of marketing, outreach, relationship building, travel training that's required for each zone. So sort of rolling them out starting in 2024 is what, Dan, I think that's the timeline
Yeah, I mean, I think we know this is going to begin like the more complex changes in 2024, and we'll have to kind of figure it out as we go. I mean, we have as I said before, we have a pretty extensive network, and some of these changes are very complicated, and SEPTA as an agency is very complicated. So I think that we'll, once we have kind of things ironed out and we go through our hearing and board process, I think we'll be able to provide more clarity, and there will be a lot of communication. We're doing a lot of engagement leading up to eventual adoption, but there'll be a lot of communication through the implementation phasing as well.
Yeah, so tentative timelines right now is what I would say, but that's what we're thinking. And then I see a question about a mileage cap, and there would not be a mileage cap within the trip. Your trip has to start and end within the zone, and the zones are only so big, so it would be hard to rack up too many miles. But there is not a cap on the mileage. And then was there another one?
Yeah, Harley, Anissa asked, is the decrease of ridership in part due to the increase of work from home opportunities? And do you believe you will be able to get your ridership up to where it was before if work from home continues?
And I think this might be in reference to the slide that Dan shared with our ridership dropping off. So what happened before that? So that was sort of an earlier slide. We've been losing ridership before the pandemic. And it has to, I think in the city, our buses have slowed down a lot. It's congestion. And then, Dan had that statistic about how our operating cost was going up and our ridership was going down. And that's because when you have more traffic on the street, you have to put more buses out to keep the same schedule. And then, I don't know that we have I mean, yes, the ridership decrease is in part, today still from people working from home. And people are starting to come back each month. We see ridership return. I don't think we're expecting our ridership to get back to where it was pre-pandemic. What we have modeled and assumed is that we're trying to get to 80% of our pre-pandemic ridership, and that's the goal. And I think that the really important goal in all of the work in SEPTA Forward is the pandemic taught us, who are, the riders who stayed on SEPTA throughout the pandemic are the people who really needed it. And, that's our ridership base. And we're doing all of these programs as part of SEPTA Forward to reorient our service to the riders who have used this service throughout the pandemic. And so, they're the shift workers, and they're the service workers, and they're the people who don't have cars. They're pretty much everyone who isn't commuting to a 9-to-5 office job downtown. And that's why we're doing the bus revolution, the regional rail master plan, is to really realign our service to provide more midday service, more evening service, more weekend service when those riders need, when they need transit service. Did you want to add anything, Dan?
No, that was extremely well said, Harley. You said that beautifully.
Harley, I think there's one more question about microtransit before I know we move to regional rail, but how will microtransit coordinate with the 4 county shared ride providers? That's some James in the chat.
Is that the like the senior shared ride program in the counties?
James, can you unmute and just clarify your question to make sure that we're capturing what
We're county shared ride providers. That sounds like the senior, but yeah, go ahead.
James, can you unmute? If not, we'll take it in the spirit.
Oh, okay. Well, no, he clarified there. So, the senior shared ride program will continue to exist, just like SEPTA operates the senior shared ride program in the city of Philadelphia, along with paratransit for the whole region. I work very, very closely with our paratransit group. If you work with Cassandra West at all in any of your work, she co-manages this project with me. And I think just like big picture, just to sort of step back and talk about the relationship between paratransit and microtransit. We have separate departments, and today we plan our fixed route bus network, and then we provide a complementary paratransit overlay. And Cassandra and I are working together to build one new mode that serves everyone the first time, so we don't have to do that overlay service. And one of our goals for microtransit for on-demand service is to be able to shift some of our senior shared ride users and our paratransit riders to the microtransit. So they're not using a secondary service, they're using our primary service. That said, not everyone can do that depending on your disability and your mobility needs. You still need that overlay service. And so, that will still exist. And especially with the county senior shared ride programs, SEPTA is not involved in those. They're funded by PennDOT and provided by the county and their contractors. So that would continue to exist, but we do hope that there would be opportunities to provide some travel training to folks using the senior shared ride program in the county so that they could find the on-demand microtransit welcoming and accessible. So, okay, with that, Dan, do you want to do the regional rail master?
Yeah. Like let's go into this. And again, this is an update that many of you probably have seen. The regional rail, you can go to the next slide, Harley. The regional rail team is working to refine sort of some of their analysis, some of the survey findings and the additional work they're doing. So this is sort of taking a step back. They're kind of a little bit past this point now, but I do want to note that Harley said something that I just want to highlight, that all of these projects share sort of a common ground, just working towards like a more fully integrated vision that's built around sort of like just greater overall utility. Buses and trains have generally been scheduled in a way that really favors 9 to 5 peak commuting. That is where we've lost the most ridership, and that is where ridership is the least likely to come back anytime soon, and where people would retain flexibility, which is great. We want people to have flexibility, but we also need to make some changes to the way we run our service to maximize the way we allocate resources and to make it ultimately useful for people. So even though regional rail is a very different mode and historically has been run totally differently than bus service or metro service, it is part of this SEPTA Forward vision, which is looking towards this sort of integrated lifestyle network of frequent all day, all week services that allow people to use transit for just, the different types of trips that they make, not just sort of the I go to work and come home at 5 trip. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. So just like with Bus Revolution, Reimagining Regional Rail set out, some goals, and the goals are very similar to the Bus Revolution goals because we plan them in accordance with each other. It's about improving and increasing access to opportunity, being able to get further, faster using the resources that we have. Go back. Sorry, I'm not done.
Right. Dan, they like they're automated.
Oh
I'm
no. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know
they're on a timer.
They're on a timer. Oh no. Okay, I got to speed up then. Prioritizing an intuitive rider experience and then creating a reliable and predictable system that people can trust. It's about reliability, it's about trust, and it's about ultimately building that rapport with people so that they feel like they can rely on our services. Next slide. So the regional rail team developed 3 different ways of addressing or making these improvements to regional rail. There was scenario 1, which was regional coverage, so 30-minute all-day service everywhere. We have a pretty expansive regional service, and these are not, unlike Bus Revolution, this is not a cost-neutral project. I want to say that up front. Like there are a lot of capital components that are going into doing this. This is really about picking the vision that's going to guide those investments going forward. So the first scenario was regional coverage, sort of flat 30-day service everywhere, regardless of where we have higher levels of demand. Scenario 2 was really sort of taking our regional rail service and tweaking it so that where demand is higher, it comes closer to matching sort of SEPTA Metro service. So like 15-minute service is sort of like the frequent service bar that's an industry standard. So it's about identifying the areas where demand is highest, so frankly where density is the highest, and providing more service in those areas. And then the third scenario was all day speed, so an all-day express service, which is better integrated with Amtrak. And this This will allow for some, some of the aspects of scenario 2, or so we have greater frequency, but also for people that are coming from further out and commuting inbound, faster trips. Next slide. So they did a survey, and basically it was like, what do you prefer? And they got about 2,300 responses, and the preferred option was scenario 2, that sort of metro service. So that does look at the creation of sort of this metro type service where demand is higher. I wouldn't say like this was the highest, this got the highest score, but there were also a lot of people that preferred the other mode. So you can go to the next slide. So basically what they've decided to do, and this is what they'll report on next, is they will have sort of this dense area of, they're calling it Silver Line because that was a term that the city used in their transit plan. And there'll be sort of a 15-minute network in the regional rail mode where density is higher, where demand is higher, where land use lends itself to higher levels of transit use. They're also going to take aspects of these other two to make some improvements in express service and make some improvements in sort of just outside that 15-minute demand region. And there is going to be some work to integrate better with Amtrak, but that's not necessarily going to make or break what SEPTA decides to implement at the end of the day. And again, to reiterate, there is not a plan right now. Excuse me, this is not a cost neutral plan. This is a capital planning program, and now they are looking at what capital projects need to go in and to make that sort of metro service work, to make these other improvements work, and then prioritize those and develop a phasing plan for implementing them over time. Next slide. And then where we're going next with Reimagining Regional Rail is to share out some more information with the public about where that 15-minute network is going to go, make sure that it captures sort of what, the public wanted and what the partners wanted, and then, use that additional input to craft sort of the final vision and sort of like start the phasing planning and that kind of thing. Next slide. Okay, you, Harley.
That's a nice thing to do. Thanks, Dan. So I just wanted to give you all an overview of the fall engagement that we're doing for the bus revolution, which includes some additional sessions that are really going to focus on the on-demand microtransit service, realizing that is a huge change for people. And so we really are looking to target some feedback from riders and stakeholders in those areas. So we have a two-pronged approach, in person and virtual. We're planning in-person open house meetings. These are at community centers, at libraries. They are traditional open houses with lots of posters and planners pointing at posters and walking people through the project and then the proposed changes. And we have food. We've got lots of handouts that we're giving out. So we're really trying to encourage people to come. I want to highlight a couple that are in Montgomery and Bucks County. But before I do that, I want to step back and just sort of give a shout out to the TMAs who have been instrumental in the bus revolution and the on-demand service, and in helping us to find really convenient and accessible locations for these open house meetings. Because I don't know that we could have done this without partnership TMA and TMA Bucks. So we did have a meeting at the Norristown Public Library that's already happened, but I want to focus on what's coming up next. Jackie helped us schedule the Peak Center at North Penn Commons, and that's on Thursday, November 3rd. And that's going to be midday from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Knowing the 132 has a lot of seniors that ride it, we really wanted to do something during the day, not in the evening as it's getting darker. And I think that there are a few other activities that are happening at that time during the day. And then we have one at Bucks County Community College at the Bristol campus that Steve was so helpful in helping us set up. And that's on Thursday, November 10th. And that's also during the day from noon until 3:30 p.m. We are working on trying to schedule a second one that is in the sort of northern Bucks area, and that'll be an evening meeting That's tentatively going to be at the Oxford Valley Mall. They have a community center and we have quite a bit of bus service there. So we're hoping to capture some bus riders where they are. So that date is still TBD and it's not up on our website, but it will be soon, and that will be, you know, later in November, early December. And then we also have another meeting at the Indian Valley Public Library to reach our Telford Satterton folks, because it can be a little hard to get to Lansdale in the evening. So this one is going to be Wednesday, November 16th from 6 until 8 p.m. So that is an evening meeting. And then those are the in-person ones. And then we also have online virtual community conversations. A lot of people aren't comfortable with online, you know, with the pandemic. And so we've been holding virtual supplements to all of our in-person meetings. We have one that's combined for Bucks County and Montgomery County, and that's going to be November 21st at 6:30 p.m. 6:30, I think it goes set to 7:30. It's an hour. And that's just a Zoom, and we ask people to register in advance. And that will focus on the service changes in the Montgomery and Bucks County area, and it will have a facilitated conversation, so people will be able to ask questions about that. With that, I always like to sort of ask some, I always appreciate an opportunity to get to talk to stakeholders in our service area, and especially when it comes to building out engagement around such huge change. So I did want to pose a few questions, but I also, if there are other questions from folks who are on the call, feel free to put them in the chat, or we can kind of raise hands. I think we have about 10 minutes so we could address those. I just want to put a few of these out here. If you have any other suggestions about how we can reach your clients, your stakeholders, the people who you serve, especially with the microtransit, I've been trying to reach out to a lot of the health and human service providers in Montgomery and Bucks County, to the social service agencies. I did notice a few familiar faces and names on this call. So this may be the second or third time some of you are seeing this presentation. Hope that's okay. But we're looking for, you know, to talk to as many people before. What I've found helpful is to do briefings with administrative staff, just to sort of familiarize people with these changes. And then a lot of partners have been very generous and offered to, you know, put up flyers in their offices if they run food banks, any kind of food distribution, to include some materials on Bus Revolution open houses to help get the word out. So we're looking for any sort of potential partnership opportunities and any ways to help get the word out about the events that we do have scheduled. And then if you represent an organization and you have other people on your team who you think would be interested in a briefing, I'm always happy to do these virtual briefings during the day with administrative staff. We're really trying to build out champions at this point. And so I always like to put that out there if anyone's interested. So with that, I was gonna open up the chat, see what other questions.
You got it. There's some questions in the chat. And Anissa, if you want to kick us off with yours.
Yeah. Absolutely. Harley, I heard you say that there was one of the in-person meetings that was to be decided. Are you guys planning to do anything in the Pottstown area, since we're kind of a transportation desert? We don't have you guys out here often or reliably. So were you guys planning to do anything in this area?
So we don't have anything in person scheduled in Pottstown, and that is only because we do not have, we're trying to focus our in-person events where we have major changes proposed. And the Pottstown area has, there are essentially no changes in the Pottstown area. It's still Route 93 that goes from Norristown Transportation Center out to Pottstown, and the schedule is very similar to what it is today. The Pottstown area is mostly served by PART. And that's why SEPTA doesn't have a lot of service there, is because, and we're only allowed to drop off in certain areas and pick up in certain areas because it's PART's service area. But we are encouraging people in the Pottstown area to attend our virtual conversation because that will be an opportunity to discuss Pottstown as well. But I will say, you are not the first person to ask me about Pottstown, and I know that that is an area where transit is very important. And I will say, as an aside, DVRPC, our regional planning agency, they were working with PART on a transit development plan for them. And they were having some discussions around bus stops. And so I had offered to put people who focus on Pottstown in touch with that project to sort of open up that conversation around transit there. So that's the long, short answer. But it is noted that there's a interest in Pottstown.
Thank you for that.
And then will the on-demand microtransit follow? I'm sorry, you're welcome to read out your questions. Marlene, do you want to? The current bus route, is the route expanded at all? Will the on-demand microtransit follow the same route as the current bus route, or is the route expanded at all? This is one I can try to pull up short answer, we tried. It's not a service expansion plan. We were really trying to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind with the microtransit. So it is a buffer of the fixed route that we are replacing. That said, the zones that we have proposed today are they're draft, and we're looking for feedback on them. There are a few that we have expanded based on stakeholder engagement. So some examples are the one in Montgomeryville. I think that one extends down to the Township Community Center, and to Aussie Market is in there, which is important grocery store to include. And then the 132 up in Telford, Satterton, we included that Walmart in Hilltown because we often have requests to serve that with a fixed route. And we can't loop up with fixed route. You can't sort of loop a bus that many times. And so we were never able to serve it with a fixed route service. But that is one of the benefits of microtransit, is you have more flexibility in serving some of those shopping centers and areas that are off route. And so that was one notable service expansion. And so that is what we're doing. That's one of the exercises at these open houses that are focused on the microtransit, is really getting feedback from riders and stakeholders. Like, oh, my doctor's office is just outside this zone. Would you consider expanding it for that? So we are trying to get a sense of where people are traveling today on the route and whether the microtransit captures that.
Harley, I think next in the chat, just to help you, so I can see you looking through the cues, would you take a suggestion for an extra in-person meeting, particularly for Asian American seniors with language issues?
Absolutely, I would love to. I was on my list of organizations to reach out to is Posse, and I don't know if, but yes, if you have other organizations, I would love an introduction or any way to facilitate a meeting. So I could maybe follow up with, I will write your name down and I will grab that from the invite list and follow up.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, we have Asian American coalitions in the suburban county, and so this is George Shea. So if you're open to it, then we can coordinate and have a meeting day set up, and bring in all the different language Asian group together.
Yes, would love to do
because the conversation will be quite different. So that's why.
Okay, it's good to know. No, it's definitely yes, I would love to do that. I'll follow up with Kristen for your contact information.
Okay, good.
And Harley, I just put it in the chat. So, and for others who are, reaching out for additional conversation, we love that. So please feel free to put in the chat, your contact information if you're looking to connect directly. So we'll keep this chat.
Joint providers. Okay, that's great. And then the mini service not be as useful for anyone who needs to cross between zones and areas. Yes, that is a concern. This is Mary Catherine Lowry pointed out. And that's something that's come up for both Bucks County and then for Montgomery County, because they're those two adjacent zones. So we're looking for feedback on that, like how people feel about that. We did those two separate zones because we felt like there were two different travel sheds and that people weren't necessarily crossing that boundary. But if people are, that's feedback that we are looking for, because that would require a transfer, which would be free with SEPTA key, but does have a time penalty because you're waiting for the new service. So that's absolutely feedback we're looking for. And the Montgomery County navigants, I'm so glad because we did a briefing with the navigants. That was another one Jackie set up for me, and they were so helpful. And then the anti-hunger network, absolutely. I'm going to put, oh wait, this is all of this is fantastic. Okay. And then
I think really the next question I see just in the chat is from Chris. And Chris, if you want to unmute, or you're welcome to ask it yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. This is an excellent webinar. Usually webinars aren't all that great. This is really great. I'm putting together, I'm planning director for Lower Merion Township, and I'm kind of putting together a summary in advance of, for everybody going on in the township, in advance of the public meeting on what's changing. There's going to be a lot of changes in Lower Merion. We're losing some bus routes, and things are being changed. And so we're going to fall to microtransit. There's going to be a lot of public outreach, and we like to do webinars like at lunch, and our planning department would be happy to co-host something. And I think with Narberth and Lower Merion, there would be something, to follow up, because I think you're going to get a lot of comments at the upcoming meeting. And I'm trying to make sure that Dan doesn't get tackled on the street from everybody in the neighborhood wanting to ask him what's going on, since he lives in Ardmore. But we would love to partner, I guess, on two things. A, for better, more public outreach, because I think there's going to be a lot, some follow-up. Secondly, also how our planning staff can coordinate, right? We want to make this work even better and help to say, where are things going? I think originally there was everything was based around the main line, but now with the Conshohocken train station, that's a whole nother shed that's coming in off of this to transit. And we have a very robust program of trying to put in bus improvements, shelters with new land development. So if we know what the routes are going forward, we can make those real stops. So ahead of time, so we can get those in place. So any of that sort of outreach, we're just here to do that. I'm kind of offering that up.
okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And Lower Merion Township is always on point with the bus shelters and the land development, and I appreciate that. Because that is a huge part of what makes our bus network accessible, are the architectural barriers, outside of the bus. And then in terms of the engagement, it sounds like you've been in contact with Dan, so maybe that's still Dan, do you want to, I know you've sort of been working a little bit more closely with Lower Merion and Narberth and Gladwin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Chris, we live in the same area, so we can feel free to get in touch with me offline. I think we can talk more about coordinating. Obviously, there are a number of changes proposed in Lower Merion, so we can talk more about those.
Great. Yeah, because I think there'll be also, we're trying to represent Narberth too. Narberth doesn't have the planning capacity that we do, but I think there's a lot of people very focused from Narberth, because it impacts them as well.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I have talked to, I think Harley and I both spoke with them in the spring.
It was earlier on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're at time, so we should probably wrap up. We all of the information is on our project website, septabusrevolution.com. I think, Dan, did you put that in the chat at one point?
Yeah, I'll do it again.
Okay, and all of our engagement calendar is on our website, and I'm gonna comb through this chat because there are a lot of great resources in here. We have a share kit on that website too, so there are flyers with all of the outreach events, the virtual, the in-person, and then like social media posts. If you have a newsletter for your municipality or for your organization, there's some like language that could just be copied and pasted along with some graphics. So we made it really easy to share information, but we are at this point just trying to get the word out. And then I think Dan's email there, busnetwork@septa.org, and Dan's the person on the other end of that email address answering those emails. So feel free to reach out to him. And if you have I can put my email in the chat if you have microtransit questions, the on demand. And I do just again want to thank Jackie and Steve for hosting this meeting, and Kristen for giving us this platform, because this is so critical at this point, is just to be able to get the word out. So we really appreciate it. And we do have, we translate all of our documents into Mandarin, into Spanish, and we can translate other documents on request. So if we just need a little bit of lead time to do that, but we can absolutely make that possible. And then we can provide translation services in person at any of our in-person events if we have a request in advance.
Well, thank you, Harley. Thank you, Dan. Thanks to the Partnership TMA of Montgomery County and TMA Bucks for co-hosting this. Stay on with us if you have anything that feels like super pressing, but if not, we're at 1 o'clock and we want to respect time. So we'll wrap up. We'll get these follow-up materials out. So look for the slides in the recording. And then it sounds like we're going to be having some additional conversations to come. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah. And thank you, Kristen, for setting all of this up. This was great. And